Good morning all. In today's class, we will discuss regarding typhoid fever and its epidemiological factors. Coming to this typhoid fever, what is this typhoid fever? This typhoid fever, it is a systemic infection which is caused due to the organism which is known as S. typhi, nothing but Salmonella typhi, and it is typically characterized by continuous fever which is lasting for more than 3 to 4 weeks, and relatively they are experiencing bradycardia which is involving intestinal lymphoid tissues and reticuloendothelial tissues and gallbladder. This enteric fever, it includes both typhoid and paratyphoid fever. It may occur sporadically, epidemically, endemically, and found only in human beings. It can occur sporadically, it can occur epidemically, and it can occur endemically, and it is mainly found only in human beings. Coming to the history, Mr. Antonius Musa, he is a Roman physician. He achieved the fame for treating Emperor Augustus 2000 years ago when he got affected with this typhoid fever mainly with cold baths. And another scientist who is known as Thomas Willis, he was credited with the first description of this typhoid fever in the year 1659. And next one is William Wood Gerhard. He was the first to differentiate clearly between typhus fever and typhoid fever in 1837. And French physician Mr. Pierre Charles Alexander Louis, he is the one who proposed the name typhoid fever. And Karl Joseph Ebert, he is the one who discovered this typhoid bacillus, and Georges Weidel, he is the one who describes the Weidel agglutination reaction of blood in 1896. Coming to the problem statement of this typhoid fever, so you can see the bright orange one is the high endemacy rate, where there are more than 100 cases per 1 lakh population, and this one is medium, which is little brown in color, 10 cases per 1000 population, and this gray one is low endemacy, where there is less than 10 cases per population. So in these orange areas, in these bright orange areas, there are nearly 100 cases per 1 lakh population, and here less than 10 cases per 1 lakh population, and this brown one, there are less than 10 or more number of cases per 1 lakh population. According to WHO estimate, it is infecting roughly 21.6 million people each year, and it is killing about 2,16,000 people to 6 lakh people each year. 62% of these are occurring in Asia and 35% are occurring in Africa. Coming to India, the largest outbreak of this typhoid in Sangli occurred from December 1975 to February 1976, and this is the endemic which had occurred in the India. In 1992, there were 3,52,980 cases with 735 deaths with this typhoid fever, and in 1993 there were 3,57,452 cases and 888 deaths with the typhoid fever, and in 1994 there were about 2,78,451 cases and 304 deaths, and in 2011 there were 1.06 million cases and 346 deaths, and prevalence rate is 88 cases per 1 lakh population, and case fatality rate due to typhoid has been varying between 1.1% to 2.5% in few years, and in Southeast Asia 50% of the strains of bacterium has multi-drug resistance, nothing but MDR. Coming to the epidemiological determinants, we have agent factors, we have host factors, we have environmental factors, and the incubation and mode of transmission. Coming to the agent factors, so what are these agent factors? In agent factor we have the host. So what is the host? The typhoid fever, it is mainly caused by the bacterium Salmonella typhi. It is from the Enterobacterium. family Enterobacteriaceae. And Salmonella typhoid A and B are relatively frequent, and Salmonella typhi is a gram-negative and facultative aerobic and non-spore forming bacteria, and it is motile due to the Peritrichus flagella, and this bacteria can grow best at 37 degrees Celsius, which is suitable temperature for this bacteria to grow, and which is the average temperature in the human beings. Coming to the structure of this Salmonella, so it has two sets of antigen and they were detected by serotyping. The first one is somatic or zero antigens, and next one is flagellar or H antigens. This somatic or zero antigens contain, O antigens contain long chain polysaccharides which comprises of heat stable polysaccharide commonly, and this flagella or H antigen, these are strongly immunogenic and includes antibody formation rapidly and in high titers following the infection or immunization. The flagellar antigen is of a dual nature and it is occurring in one or two phases. Coming to the reservoir of infection, so human beings are the only reservoir of this infection, namely the cases and carriers. What are the cases? The persons who are affected with this typhoid. A case is infectious as long as bacilli appears in the stools or urine, and case be mixed or mild or severe. The case may be mixed, mild or severe, and the carriers are temporary or incubatory, which excrete bacilli for about 6 to 8 weeks, and in chronic and excrete bacilli for more than 1 year. Organism persists in gallbladder and biliary tract. Coming to the reservoir of infection, the human beings are the only reservoir for this infection. They include both cases and carriers, and a case can be infectious as long as the bacilli is appearing in the stools and urine, and case may be mixed, mild or severe. Coming to the carriers, they may be temporary or they may be incubatory, and they excrete bacilli for more than 6 to 8 weeks. In chronic, the excreted bacilli is for more than 1 year, and the organism is mainly present in the gallbladder and biliary tract. Coming to the source of infection, the primary source of this typhoid infection are feces and urines of cases and carriers, and fecal carriers are the most frequent than urinary carriers, and secondary sources include contaminated water, contaminated food, fingers and flies. So how this bacteria is entering into our body? This Salmonella typhi, it is entering into the M cells. From M cells it is entering into the macrophages. From macrophages it is entering into the mesenteric lymph node. From mesenteric lymph node through blood it is entering into the spleen. It is entering into the liver, and via gallbladder it is entering into the GI tract. So I'll say you clearly in the following slide. So this is how ingestion of contaminated food and water with Salmonella bacteria, once it got infected, it is invading into the small intestine and entering into the bloodstream. Once it is entered into the bloodstream, it is carried by white blood cells into liver, spleen and bone marrow. It is carried out into liver, spleen and bone marrow by white blood cells, and it multiply and re-enter the blood. Once it get multiplies, it is re-entering into the bloodstream. The bacteria invade gallbladder, biliary system and the lymphatic tissues and bowel and multiply in high numbers. Once this one is occurring, it then passes into the intestinal tract and can be identified for the diagnosis in culture from stools and tested in the laboratory. This is how the Salmonella enter into your body and multiply in your body, and course of this infection typhoid fever. Coming to the host factors. Age. What is the age here? It is mainly occurring at any age, but highest age group is 6 to 19 years old age group. And coming to the sex, cases are more in males compared to the females, and carrier rate is more in females. Coming to the immunity, antibody may be stimulated by infection or immunization. Antibody against O antigen is higher in patient with the disease, and antibody against H antigen is higher in immunized person. The Salmonella typhi is an intracellular organism, so cell-mediated immunity plays a major role in combating the infection. Coming to the environmental factors, typhoid fever is regarded as an index of general sanitation in any country. So increased incidence can be seen in the month of July to September, and it is in outside the human body. Bacilli are found in water for 2 to 7 days, but do not multiply. And in soil irrigated with sewage, it can be appearing for 35 to 70 days. And in ice and ice cream, over a month it can stay. And in food it will multiply and survive for sometimes. And in milk, it grows rapidly without altering its taste. And coming to the vegetables, it will grow in sewage plant, and pollution of drinking water and water supplies, open area defecation and urination, low personal hygiene, and health ignorance. All these are the environmental and social factors which are favoring for the transmission of this disease, typhoid fever. Coming to the incubation period, the incubation period is usually about 10 to 14 days, but it could be as short as 3 days also, and as long as 21 days, depending upon the dose of bacilli that had been ingested by the affected person. So as I said, this is the mode of transmission here. Feces and urine from the cases or carriers, they are entering into the water, soil, flies and fingers. From this water, soil, flies and fingers, it could be foods or raw or cooked. So from the foods, they are directly entering into the mouth of well persons. The disease is transmitted by fecal-oral route or urine-oral routes, either directly through hands soiled with the feces or urine of the cases of the carriers, or indirectly by the ingestion of contaminated water, milk, food through flies, and contaminated ice creams, milk products, and the other rich source of infections. Coming to the clinical features of this infection, it is mainly occurring in 4 weeks. It is mainly occurring in 3 weeks. So it is mainly occurring in 3 weeks. So in first week you will observe malaise, headache, cough will be there, sore throat will be there. This is called as prodromal stage. This is called as prodromal stage, and this disease classically presents with step ladder fashion in raising temperature. So for first 4 to 5 days, it will be like 40 to 41 degrees Celsius, accompanied by headache, vague abdominal pain, and constipation or pea soup diarrhea. In second week, it is mainly from the 7th to 10th day of illness. Mild hepatosplenomegaly can be observed in majority of the patients, and relatively bradycardia may be present, and rose spots can be seen. I'll show you what are these rose spots. In third week, the patient will appear in a typhoid state. It is the state of prolonged apathy, toxemia, delirium, and disorientation, and sometimes it can lead to coma also. And diarrhea, it will become apparent. If we left untreated by this time, there is a high risk that 5 to 10% of intestinal hemorrhage can occur. And rare complications can include hepatitis, pneumonia, thrombophlebitis, myocarditis, cholecystitis, nephritis, osteomyelitis, and psychosis. You can see these are the rose spots which are occurring in the second week. You can see here, these are some rose spots. So as I said, these are some clinical signs and symptoms of this typhoid fever: high temperature, severe headache, stomach pain, loss of appetite, constipation, and rash. So these are some signs and symptoms you can observe in this typhoid fever. Hemorrhagic presentation can be occurred. Intestinal bleeding, it is often by a sudden drop of blood pressure and shock, followed by the appearance of blood in the stools. You can see this is the intestinal hemorrhage. And ileum, especially in distal ileum, jejunum, usually does not perforate in typhoid, but it can occur. The perforation of this distal ileum, jejunum, it can occur in the third week. So this is the perforation of jejunum and ileum. Coming to the laboratory diagnosis of this typhoid, they are doing microbiological procedures and serological procedures and diagnostic tests. Coming to the microbiological procedures and blood cultures. First one, bacteremia, it can occur early in the disease, and blood cultures are positive. In first week, 90% of the blood cultures will be positive for this typhoid fever, salmonella typhi, and in second week 75% of the cases, in third week 60% of the cases, and fourth week and later it will be 25%. Coming to the serological procedure, first one is Felix Vidal test. So significant titers help in this diagnosis. Serum agglutinin rise abruptly during the second or third week. Following the titers of antibodies against the antigens are significant when single sample is tested. So O will be higher in 1 in 160 and H will be higher 1 in 320. Testing a paired sample for 7 to 10 days for a rise of antibodies carries a greater significance. Coming to the limitations of this Vidal test, classically, a four-fold rise of antibody in paired sera Vidal test is considered diagnostic of typhoid fever. However, paired sera are often difficult to obtain and specific chemotherapy has to be instituted on the basis of single Vidal test. And furthermore, in areas where the fever is due to infectious causes is common, occurrence and the possibility exists that false positive reaction may occur as a result of non-typhoid fever. Coming to the new diagnostic steps, coming to the new diagnostic investigations, Ideal TB detects IgM09 antibodies within few minutes, and typhoid test that detects presence of IgM and IgG in 1 hour are sensitivity it is greater than 95% and specificity it is about 75%, and Typhi.M that detects IgM only when the sensitivity is 90% and the specificity is 93%, and Typhi.Rapid it detects only when the sensitivity is 80%, 85% and specificity is 99%. And within 50 minutes, immunochromatographic test to detect the IgM. Coming to this misdiagnosis, what is this misdiagnosis means? Paratyphoid fever is similar to the typhoid fever and usually it is very less severe. So parenteric fever, a typhoid fever like fever, but it is not caused by the salmonella. So gastroenteritis, mild case of typhoid fever may be mistaken for this gastroenteritis. So typhomalarial fever, it can be like brucellosis or tuberculosis or infective myocarditis, or it can be Q5 fever, or it can be rickettsial infection, or it can be acute diarrheal type, or it can be viral hepatitis or lymphoma or adult still disease or malaria. So you have to distinguish between these factors which we have seen in this slide. You may misdiagnose this as a typhoid fever, but you have to consider this typhoid malarial fever, brucellosis, tuberculosis, infective myocarditis, endocarditis, Q fever, rickettsial infection, acute diarrhea, viral hepatitis, lymphoma, and adult still disease and malaria. You have to distinguish between these fevers. How to control this typhoid fever? Mainly we can control through control of reservoirs that are cases and carriers, and control of sanitation and immunization. So cases, early diagnosis of the cases by blood cultures and stool culture, we can diagnose them, and notification it is mandatory, and isolation of the cases till it has got 3 negative tests, and treatment with appropriate antibiotics and disinfection of the stool and urine by 5% cresol in 2 hours and clothes by 2% chlorine, and follow-up examination of stool and urine for 3 to 4 months and at 12 months after discharge. Coming to the management of typhoid fever, there is general management and specific management. In general management, we are giving supportive care. It is including maintenance of adequate hydration, antibiotics and appropriate nutrition. And specifically, we are giving antimicrobial therapy, which we are using chloramphenicol, ampicillin, amoxicillin, trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole and fluoroquinolones. In case of quinolone resistance, we are going for azithromycin 3rd generation cephalosporin, nothing but ceftriaxone. So you can see treatment of uncomplicated type fever. You can screenshot this and you can write. If the susceptibility is fully sensitive, we are giving fluoroquinolones. Example of fluoxetine or ciprofloxacin. The dosage will be like 50 mg per kg body weight. We are giving for 5 to 7 days. If fluoroquinolones are resistance for the patient, we can give alternate antibiotics such as chloramphenicol, amoxicillin or TMP SMX. So this is the daily recommended dose here, and these are the number of doses which we have to give. You can just screenshot this. You can just screenshot this picture and you can write it in your notes. For multi-drug resistance, we are giving fluoroquinol or cefixime. For quinolone resistance, we are giving azithromycin or ceftriax. Coming to the diet, fluids and electrolytes should be monitored and replaced diligently, and oral. Coming to the diet, fluids and electrolytes should be monitored and they should be replaced accordingly, and oral nutrition with soft digestible diet is preferable in the absence of abdominal distension of ileus. And activity, no specific limitations on the activity are indicated, and the rest will be helpful, but mobility should be maintained if the patient is tolerating, and the patient should be encouraged to stay at home and work until the recovery. Coming to the carriers, we have to identify the carriers through culture and serological examination, and you have to treat them by intensive of course. Mainly you have to use ampicillin or amoxicillin with probenzized for 6 weeks, and surgery like cholecystectomy can be done if it is needed, and you should keep them under surveillance, and health education has to be provided. Next one is control of sanitation. We have to protection, and we have to purify the drinking water supplies, and you have to improve the basic sanitation, and you have to promote food hygiene. Simply you can do your hand washing and you can reduce the severity of the disease typhoid. The last one is immunization. So vaccination is mainly recommended to those people who are living in the endemic areas and the household contacts, and the group which is at risk, mainly the school children and hospital staff, and those who are attending males and yatras. And 3 types of vaccines are available. First one is injectable typhoid vaccine, second one is the live oral vaccine, and third one is TAP vaccine. First one is injectable typhoid, that is VI vaccine. It is single dose injectable typhoid vaccine. It is from the bacterial capsule of Salmonella typhi strain of TY21A, and this vaccine is recommended for the children over 2 years of age. It is given subcutaneous or intramuscularly, and efficiency is about 64 to 72%. And typhoral vaccine, it is a live attenuated bacterial vaccine. It is manufactured from T521A strain of Salmonella typhi, and the efficacy rate is ranging from 50 to 80%, and it is not recommended in the children who are younger than 6 years of age. And this course consists of 1 capsule. It is usually taken 1 hour before the food with glass of water or milk, first day, third day, and the 5th day. And the next one is no antibiotic should be taken during this period of time. When we are taking the typhoral vaccine, we should not take any kind of antibiotic. And immunity starts within 2 to 3 weeks after the administration of Immunity starts 2 to 3 weeks after administration of this typhoid vaccine and typhoral vaccine, and it lasts for about 3 years, and you need a booster dose after 3 years. Coming to the facts of these vaccines for typhoid, the immunity will last for 3 years. After that, you have to get a booster dose, and vaccines are not effective in the prevention of paratyphoid fevers. You cannot prevent the paratyphoid fevers, but you can prevent the typhoid fevers. So this is TY21A oral live attenuated vaccine. They are taking at day 1, day 3, day 5 and day 7. They are taken with glass of milk or water. They are taken with glass of milk or water. This is the typhoid VI polysaccharide vaccine, which is also known as Typhim VI. We can give it through intramuscular examination. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you have any queries regarding this topic, you can contact me through my email and WhatsApp. Thank you all.